You ever sit in a room full of people and still feel like you're alone? You ever give your heart to someone and watch them rip it apart like it meant nothing? You ever show up, support them, defend them, only to realize they were the ones tearing you down the whole time? Yeah, I know that pain, that sting, that silence that screams louder than words. You try to keep the peace, you try to understand, you try to love, but all they do is take and take and take. Let me tell you something powerful. You are not weak for wanting peace. You're not foolish for loving deeply, but you become trapped when you let toxic people sit at the table God prepared for you. The moment you recognize your worth is the moment their grip starts to break. There's one decision, just one, that can make them vanish. Not because you're cruel, not because you're bitter, but because you're finally awake. Today, I'm going to tell you what that one thing is, and when you do it, when you really commit to it, not halfway, not hesitating, toxic people won't know how to handle you. They'll leave forever. Ready to take back your power? You ever notice how some people don't really want to change? They just want to keep talking, keep circling, keep you wrapped up in the same cycles, the same arguments, the same manipulation, because as long as they've got your attention, they've got access. And that's all they truly care about. Toxic people don't need daily communication to poison your life. All they need is a little piece of your mind, a little piece of your heart, a small doorway into your spirit. That's why cutting the conversation won't cut them off, because they'll find a way to creep in again through guilt, through memories, through mutual friends, through silence. See, they survive on access. They survive on knowing they still have a place in your world, even if it's small, even if it's just a thought. That's why the only way to make them leave for good is to cut the access completely. Shut the door, lock it, board it up. Now, let me tell you something they won't teach you in school or at your job or even sometimes in church. You can stop talking to someone and still let them live in your head rent-free. You can block their number and still replay every word they ever said. That's not freedom. That's emotional jail. Toxic people are masters at building invisible chains, chains made of memories of unhealed wounds, of guilt trips and what ifs. You think cutting off the conversation is enough? No. They'll use your silence as an excuse to start rumors. They'll call you bitter. They'll play the victim. They'll poke around until you respond. And the moment you do, even just to defend yourself, they've got you again. You've reopened the gate. You gave them a signal. I'm still here. I still care what you think. But real power, real growth, that comes when you can walk past their name, their pictures, their posts, their energy, and feel nothing. Not because you're heartless, but because you're healed. You've moved on, not just in action, but in spirit. They no longer have access to your time, to your peace, to your story. That's where the shift happens. That's when they leave, not because you forced them, but because you no longer feed them. See, there's a difference between blocking someone on your phone and blocking them from your future. You can delete the messages, sure. You can unfollow them. You can even avoid seeing them in public. But if they still have a say in your self-worth, they still have access. If their name still causes your chest to tighten, your stomach to drop, your mind to spin, they still have access. And that's okay for a moment. Healing isn't instant, but sooner or later you've got to make a decision. Not an emotional one, a spiritual one, a soul-level decision that says, I don't care who you used to be to me. I care about who I am now. And I will no longer sacrifice my peace so you can stay comfortable in my life. That's what cutting access really means. It means understanding that silence is not always enough if you're still holding the door open in your heart. You've got to change the locks. You've got to clear out the room. You've got to reclaim your territory, not with rage, but with purpose. This is your space now. They don't belong here anymore. I know it's hard. I know there's history. I know there were good times. I know part of you still wishes they would change. That maybe one day they'll realize what they lost. That maybe the love, the loyalty, the time you gave will finally be enough for them to treat you right. But let me be real with you. Some people will never change as long as they think they can come back. As long as there's a door cracked open, they'll keep playing games. They don't learn through chances, they learn through consequences. And sometimes the only language they understand is absence. The only truth that hits them is your silence paired with complete disconnection, not out of spite, out of necessity. You're not their fixer. You're not their lifeline. You are not responsible for carrying broken people who refuse to heal. You can love them from a distance, but love is not permission to destroy your own peace. They had their chance. They used it. Now it's your turn to choose you. Let your absence speak louder than your words ever could. Let your peace become the message they never expected. Will never change, and you won't stay safe, and that will make a speech you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel bad for protecting yourself. That's not selfish. That's sacred. You were not created to be someone's emotional punching bag. You were not made to carry burdens that don't belong to you. Toxic people will always call you selfish when you stop serving their chaos. That's their tactic. They want you to feel like cutting them off means you're cruel. But ask yourself, what did they give you really? Confusion, anxiety, disrespect, sleepless nights, second guessing your own worth? That's not love. That's manipulation. That's emotional theft. And you have every right, every divine right to shut it down. Don't just walk away. Close the door with authority, with finality, with clarity. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them play victim if they want. Because peace is louder than drama and truth is louder than lies. The people meant for you will never require you to break yourself to keep them. You got to understand. You train people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Every time you forgive without change, every time you stay silent when they disrespect you, every time you let them back in after promising yourself you were done, you teach them that your boundaries are flexible, that your heart is negotiable, that your soul is for sale, and they will keep testing the limits until you draw a line so deep, so firm, so final, that crossing it means losing you forever. That's the moment the game ends. Not when you cry, not when you plead, but when you detach, when you go cold, not out of bitterness, but out of survival, when you stop engaging, when your love stops being a weapon they can use. That's when they realize they no longer have control. You didn't just stop talking, you stopped letting them pull strings. That's what cutting access really means. It's not a loud exit, it's a quiet transformation. Sometimes the real battle isn't cutting them off, it's not letting them back in, because they'll come back. Oh yeah, they always come back. With sweet words, with fake apologies, with changed behavior. On the surface, they'll test your resolve. They'll remind you of the good times. They'll make you question yourself. But listen to me. Memory is a liar when it comes to pain. It'll show you the laughs and hide the tears. It'll play the highlights and skip the damage, but you got to look at the whole picture. Remember the confusion. Remember the nights you couldn't sleep. Remember how small they made you feel. Because if you don't, you'll invite them right back into the room they destroyed. Cutting access isn't a one-time thing. It's a commitment to yourself, to your healing, to your future. Don't let the ghost of who they pretended to be haunt the person you're becoming. Stay strong. You've come too far to turn back now. You want to know what real freedom feels like? It's waking up without that weight on your chest. It's looking at your phone and not dreading what message might be there. It's laughing again without wondering if someone's going to ruin your peace. That's the power of cutting access. It clears the noise. It brings your spirit back into alignment. You start to think clearer, love deeper, sleep better. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You took back your power from someone who never deserved it. And here's the wild part. They'll feel it, even in your silence. Even if they never say a word. They'll feel the shift. They'll feel your energy leave their orbit because you were the light, not them. You were the stable one. You were the loyal one. And now that energy's gone. You didn't have to curse them. You didn't have to post about them. You just stopped giving them the thing they needed most, your attention. Let them go. Not because they begged for it, not because they apologized, but because you deserve to breathe without someone choking your spirit. You deserve to wake up without carrying someone else's damage. Life is already hard enough without dragging toxic people through it. You were never supposed to be their fixer, their savior, their emotional punching bag. You were supposed to grow, to thrive, to rise. But that can't happen when your energy is tangled up with people who only love you when you're easy to control. So cut the access, not just the words. Not just the call logs, not just the social media. Cut the emotional cord, the mental cord, the spiritual cord. Walk away not just in footsteps, but in faith. That your peace matters more than their chaos. And that you don't need to explain yourself to anyone who made a career out of misunderstanding you. Some people will only respect your boundaries once you stop apologizing for having them. They'll keep pushing, keep testing, keep twisting your words as long as you say things like, I'm sorry, but I just need space. Or, I hope this doesn't upset you, but I have to do what's best for me. Let me tell you something. Boundaries backed by apologies are just suggestions to toxic people. They don't take your kindness as grace, they take it as weakness. They hear your apology and they see an opening, an opportunity to guilt you, to manipulate you, to reframe your peace as a betrayal. That's why you have to start setting boundaries not with emotion, but with execution, not with explanations, but with decisions. Boundaries aren't conversations, they're commitments. If you're not willing to enforce them, you might as well not set them at all. Because people remember actions, not words. You can write them a letter, cry on the phone, explain your whole healing journey, but if you let them back in every time they knock, they'll never believe you're serious. The time for guilt is over. The time for strength is now. Boundaries that work aren't defended, they're demonstrated. You ever notice how you don't have to explain your worth to people who already value you? That's the thing about healthy people. They don't take your boundaries as rejection. They don't question your need for space. They don't make it about them. But toxic people, oh, they'll turn it into a trial. Why are you being distant? I thought we were close. You've changed. Yes, you have. And that's the point. Boundaries are proof that growth is happening. That you're not living for approval anymore. That your peace comes first, not second, not maybe, first. But here's the hard part. You can't set a real boundary until you're willing to lose the relationship it might cost. You've got to ask yourself, is this person worth shrinking for? Is this connection worth bending for? Again and again until I break. Because if you're scared to set the line, they will keep crossing it. And it won't stop until you stop explaining yourself. Let your boundary be the message. Let your action be the answer. No apologies, no debate, just clarity, just strength. You are allowed to protect yourself without feeling like you're doing something wrong. Sometimes people don't believe your boundary because they remember who you used to be. The version of you who always said yes. The version who always gave second, third, and fourth chances. The version who cried and begged and pleaded to be understood. And now that you're standing tall, now that you're saying no without guilt, walking away without a breakdown, choosing silence over chaos, they're shocked, confused, angry, because they were addicted to the version of you that needed their validation. But guess what? That version of you is gone, buried, evolved. And you don't owe anyone a tour of your transformation. You don't need to explain your growth to people who only liked you when you were broken. You don't need to soften your boundaries for the sake of comfort. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Because while they're busy misunderstanding your strength, you're finally living in it. Action over apology. Power over permission. This is what healing looks like. And it doesn't ask for approval. They'll call you cold. They'll say you switched up, that you think you're better now. And you know what? Let them. Because for the first time, you're not shrinking yourself to make other people feel big. You're not lighting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You're not making room for people who never made room for you. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors with locks. You choose who gets access. You choose who gets close. And you don't need a reason that makes sense to anyone but you. If someone disrespects your time, your energy, your heart, they don't get to stay. Simple, direct, firm. That's what action looks like. You stop showing up for people who never show up for you. You stop answering calls that drain your soul. You stop allowing your kindness to be confused for weakness. Because the moment you stop apologizing for your standards is the moment people start realizing they can't walk all over you anymore. And let me tell you something. That moment is powerful. That moment changes everything. Some people only want access to the parts of you that benefit them. They love the version of you that listens, helps, supports. But the moment you ask for something back, suddenly you're too much. Suddenly you're dramatic. Suddenly you've got an attitude. Let's call it what it is. They're uncomfortable with your boundaries because they can no longer use you. And when people can't use you, they try to confuse you, make you question your value, make you feel guilty for growing. That's when you know your boundaries are working. Because toxic people don't react to your pain, they react to your power. They were fine when you were broken because broken people are easier to control. But healed people, people with standards, with self-respect, that scares them. So let it. Let your new level make them nervous. Let your silence confuse them. Let your distance speak for itself. You're not rude. You're not arrogant. You're just done apologizing for choosing peace. You don't have to be rude to be clear. You don't have to be loud to be heard. Some of the strongest boundaries are the quietest. It's the text you don't reply to, the event you don't attend, the call you don't return. It's the invitation you don't accept, not because you're bitter, but because you finally realize your energy is sacred. You don't need to send a final message. You don't need to announce your exit. You just leave gracefully, silently, powerfully, because at the end of the day, real boundaries don't scream, they whisper. They move differently. They say, I'm not available for anything that costs me my peace. And if someone doesn't understand that, they were never for you. Let your actions speak for you. Let your consistency show them this isn't a phase. It's who you are now. Boundaries don't just protect your space, they redefine your worth. And the people who truly love you will never need you to apologize for having them. You ever set a boundary and then start second guessing it because of how someone reacted? Yeah, we've all been there. You draw the line and suddenly they go silent, they get distant, they throw shade, They make you feel like you're the bad guy. But let me break it down for you. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your boundary isn't the problem, their entitlement is. They're upset because they were comfortable violating your peace, and now that comfort is gone. That's not your fault. That's growth. And growth comes with resistance. It comes with loneliness. It comes with people falling off. But every person who leaves when you stop sacrificing yourself for them was never really for you in the first place. They loved the access, not the person. They loved the benefits, not the bond. So let them fall off. Let them walk. Because if your boundary makes someone leave, they were never going to stay in a healthy version of your life anyway. There's a quiet kind of power in knowing you don't have to respond. You don't have to fight. You don't have to prove anything. You set the boundary, you live in it, and you let the chips fall where they may. That's emotional maturity. That's spiritual discipline. That's what happens when you stop needing people to like your decisions in order to make them. You move differently. You choose peace over performance. And the people who stay, they're the ones who see your value beyond your utility. They love you, not just the things you do for them. That's what boundaries reveal. Who's really for you? Who can handle your strength? Who respects your no as much as your yes? And if you have to explain, justify, or shrink for someone to stay, that's not love, that's survival. And you weren't made to survive relationships. You were made to thrive in them. And that only happens when you stop apologizing for being whole. There's a version of you waiting on the other side of your boundaries. A version that's calm, centered, free. A version that's not constantly apologizing for needing rest, for being unavailable, for wanting peace over chaos. You have to choose her. You have to protect him. You have to be so loyal to your growth that you're willing to disappoint anyone who demands you stay small, because that's what boundaries do. They draw a circle around your peace and say, this is mine. And not everyone is invited. That's not rude, that's righteous. That's wisdom. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your energy. Not friends, not family, not anyone. If they can't handle the boundary, they don't deserve the access. That's how you shift the atmosphere. Not by shouting, but by standing. Not by begging, but by becoming. This is your new standard, and you're not sorry for it. There comes a moment in your life when you have to stop waking up every day trying to convince people you're a good person. You have to stop bending over backwards to prove your heart. Because the truth is, no matter how kind you are, how many times you show up, how many chances you give, there will always be someone who looks at you through the eyes of their own brokenness and still finds fault. And you can't heal that. You can't fix that. You can't spend your whole life walking on eggshells around people who are determined to misunderstand your spirit. The ones who twist your kindness into manipulation, who see your patience as weakness, who use your empathy as an opportunity to control you. Stop trying to prove anything. A good heart doesn't need validation. It doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need applause. You are not on trial for the love you've given. You are not guilty for someone else's bitterness. Let them talk, let them question, let them assume. You don't owe anyone a performance to be worthy of peace. The moment you try to prove you're good to people who don't believe in you, you start betraying yourself. You start editing who you are. You start shrinking your honesty and stretching your tolerance. You start doing things out of guilt instead of grace. And that's not love, that's survival. And it's exhausting. It drains your spirit. It depletes your soul. Because no matter what you do, it's never enough for people who have already decided to see you through the lens of their own hurt. And when you start basing your worth on their opinions, you lose control of your life. You lose your joy. You lose your fire. Stop letting unhealed people be the judge of your character. You are not here to be perfect. You are not here to be palatable. You are not here to be everyone's favorite person. You are here to walk in truth, to move with integrity, and to let the results speak for themselves. Goodness doesn't have to explain itself. It shows up and keeps showing up, with or without recognition. You ever notice how people who are truly good never feel the need to announce it? They don't walk into a room shouting about their loyalty. They don't post a highlight reel of their kindness. They just do what they do. Quietly, consistently, genuinely. And you know what? That's enough. But when you start dealing with toxic people, manipulative people, broken people who never took the time to heal, they'll make you feel like you have to prove your every move. They'll gaslight you into thinking that being honest is selfish, that having boundaries is cold, that standing your ground is unkind, that being quiet is shady. It's a trap, a mind game. And if you fall for it, you'll spend your life trying to justify your heart to people who were never ready to receive it. That's not your job. You don't have to explain yourself to someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. Your life is not a courtroom. Your soul is not on trial. You can let them go and still have peace. The loudest voices that question your character are often the ones most threatened by your peace. They want you to beg, to chase, to overextend because it validates their control. But the moment you stop trying to prove yourself, the moment you stop responding to every accusation, stop explaining every decision, stop defending every boundary, they get confused. They get angry. They start calling you distant, fake, changed. And yes, you have changed. You've learned that proving yourself to the wrong people is spiritual self-sabotage. You've learned that being misunderstood is not your burden to carry. You've learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be silent and let the fruit of your life do the talking. That's the kind of strength that speaks volumes. The kind of strength that doesn't need an audience. You don't have to be loud to be real. You don't have to be seen to be valuable. You don't have to be approved to be enough. Let your peace make the statement. Let your peace be the proof. Trying to prove you're a good person is what keeps you tied to relationships that no longer serve your growth. You stay longer than you should. You explain yourself more than you need to. You give when you're empty. You smile when you're hurting. You try to be the glue, the fixer, the forgiver, because deep down you think being good means being self-sacrificial. But that's not goodness. That's people-pleasing wrapped in spiritual exhaustion. Real goodness includes boundaries. Real goodness has limits. Real goodness says, I love you, but I will not let you bleed me dry. If someone can't see your heart after all you've done, nothing more you do will change their perception. Because it's not about what you're doing, it's about who they've decided you are. And if they've made up their mind to doubt you, let them. You don't need to convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding your soul. Sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that even when you're a good person, you won't always be treated with kindness. Even when you give love, you won't always get it back. Even when you show up with honesty, people will still lie on your name. And it hurts. It cuts deep. Because you know your intentions were pure. You know your actions came from a place of love, but still, people will project, people will twist, people will demonize the very things you did from the deepest parts of your soul. And that's when you have to look in the mirror and remind yourself, I know who I am. I know my heart. I know my truth. And you walk in that. You stop begging people to see you clearly. You stop wasting your tears trying to make them understand. You keep your hands clean. You keep your spirit right. And you trust that truth has a way of revealing itself in time. Good people don't need to scream. They just keep walking with grace. There are people who will only believe you're a good person if you're constantly bending to their will. If you agree with everything. If you never say no. If you never call them out. The moment you start standing up for yourself, suddenly you're difficult. Suddenly you're not the same. But here's the truth. They only loved you when you were easy to control. When your kindness served them, not you. And the moment that shifts, their loyalty evaporates. That's not a reflection of you. It's a revelation of them. You don't have to water yourself down to be liked. You don't have to erase your boundaries to be accepted. Being a good person does not mean being a silent one. It does not mean becoming a doormat for dysfunctional people. It means being grounded, being honest, being authentic, even when it's inconvenient, even when it means some people walk away. If being real costs you approval, let it. Because your peace is too expensive to rent out for validation. The most freeing thing you will ever do is stop trying to manage other people's perception of you. You'll feel lighter, stronger. You'll feel your power coming back. Because your worth no longer depends on whether someone likes your tone, agrees with your choices, or believes your story. You'll realize that being a good person doesn't mean being universally liked. It means being aligned with your values, your truth, your calling. And that doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence, with distance, with people fading out because they can no longer manipulate the version of you that stayed quiet to keep the peace. But now you're done auditioning for people who never had the capacity to appreciate your spirit. Now you're done explaining yourself to those who never listened in the first place. That's the real glow up. When you stop trying to look good to people who don't even know how to see you, and you start living good, living free, living real. At some point, you've got to ask yourself, why am I trying so hard to be seen as good by people who would never do the same for me? Why am I giving so much of my energy to convincing someone who would never sacrifice a fraction of that energy for my peace? That's when you wake up. That's when you remember that you don't need to beg to be respected. You don't need to chase to be loved. You don't need to defend to be enough. Your goodness is not a campaign. It's a commitment to yourself, to God, to truth. And when you start honoring that above all else, you become unshakable. They can talk, they can twist, they can walk away. But you You'll still be standing, still be whole, still be good, not because they said so, but because you know so. There's a sacred power in healing that happens away from the noise, away from the spotlight, away from the opinions and expectations of people who don't really understand what you're carrying. Some pain doesn't need an audience. Some growth doesn't require applause. Sometimes the most important thing you can do for yourself is retreat, pull back, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Because you finally realize that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your transformation. Healing is personal, it's messy, it's sacred. And if you let too many voices in, you'll start molding your recovery to make other people comfortable. You'll rush your process to meet their timelines. You'll hide your pain behind a smile just to keep them from asking questions. But real healing, real growth, that happens in the quiet. When you lay everything bare. When you sit with your wounds and stop pretending they don't exist. That's when the shift begins. That's when strength is built. Not when everyone sees it, but when no one does. And you still choose to get back up anyway. Some of the deepest growth you'll ever experience will happen in moments when no one is watching, in the silence, in the solitude, in the space where you have nothing to prove and everything to face. The late nights when the world is asleep and your soul is wide awake. The quiet mornings when it's just you, your thoughts, and your God. That's when the real work begins. That's where healing takes root. But if you try to broadcast your growth too soon, if you start showing off the progress before the roots are deep enough, you risk being swayed by every opinion, every comment, every question. Not everyone will understand your healing. Some will mock it, some will downplay it, some will resent it because your growth shines a light on their stagnation. And that's why privacy becomes protection. That's why silence becomes sacred. You're not hiding, you're guarding what's holy. You're honoring what's fragile. You're building something solid in the dark. So when you finally do step into the light, nothing and no one can shake it loose. There's a reason why seeds grow in the dirt, in the darkness, beneath the surface where no one can see. Because growth needs pressure. It needs patience. It needs protection. You don't dig up a seed every day to show people it's growing. You water it in silence. You nurture it in faith. And you trust that in time it'll break through the soil and show the world what was happening all along. Your healing is the same. You don't owe the world an explanation for your process. You don't need to post every step. You don't have to prove you're evolving. Just evolve. Just heal. Just grow. Quietly, powerfully, consistently. And when the time is right, when your spirit is strong and your foundation is firm, your life will speak for itself. Not in whispers, but in undeniable evidence. The best version of you is becoming, not for their validation, but for your liberation. Sometimes the reason we struggle to heal is because we're too busy explaining our wounds. We want people to understand why we hurt, how we were wronged, how deeply we were broken. But most people are listening just to respond, not to understand. And while you're pouring out your soul, they're judging your weakness, comparing your journey to theirs, offering advice they wouldn't take themselves. That's why silence is power. It creates a boundary, a barrier between your soul and their assumptions. Not everyone has the capacity to hold your story. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. So keep some things to yourself. Keep your process sacred. Let your heart breathe without the pressure of performing. It's okay to disappear for a while. It's okay to go quiet. You're not being distant. You're being deliberate. You're choosing healing over attention, growth over approval, wholeness over popularity. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. When you heal in private, you remove the pressure to be perfect. You give yourself space to be honest, to break down, to cry, to question, to sit in the discomfort without putting on a show. You stop worrying about what people will think and start focusing on what your soul needs. You begin to rebuild not the version of you they loved, but the version of you you've always needed to be. And that version might be quieter, more focused, less accessible, but it's stronger, wiser, rooted. And when you grow in silence, you're not just changing your habits, you're changing your spirit. You start seeing the world differently. You start choosing peace over chaos, energy over attention, purpose over people pleasing. That's real transformation. That's the kind of growth that doesn't just change how you live, it changes who you are. And it doesn't need a stage, it just needs truth. And there's something powerful about watching your life get better without having to announce it. Watching your peace increase. Watching your energy protect itself. Watching your soul heal, not because you shouted about it, but because you honored the process in private. You kept showing up for yourself even when no one clapped. You kept saying no even when it disappointed people. You kept choosing your mental health, your boundaries, your purpose, even when it was misunderstood. That kind of growth, it's unshakable. because it wasn't built on validation, it was built on intention. You weren't doing it for them, you were doing it for you. And you don't need to defend that. You don't need to apologize for becoming the kind of person your past self prayed for. That's the reward. That's the victory. Not being seen, but being whole, being rooted, being ready. When people can't access your healing, they can't interfere with it. And that's a blessing. Because some folks don't want you whole. They want you dependent. They want you wounded. They want you to stay small so they can feel big. And the moment you go silent, the moment you pull away from the chaos, stop explaining yourself, stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And that scares them because they don't know what version of you is coming back. And truthfully, maybe you're not coming back at all. Maybe you've outgrown the environment that broke you. Maybe you're stepping into a life that doesn't include them. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to witness your healing. Not everyone is qualified to walk with you through your growth. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Let them talk. You're too busy becoming. Silence is not emptiness, it's elevation. It's where your spirit speaks loudest. It's where God meets you. It's where the answers you've been chasing finally find you. Because healing isn't just about recovering from what hurt you. It's about rediscovering who you are without the noise. It's about reconnecting with the parts of you that got buried under other people's expectations. It's about choosing yourself fully and unapologetically and knowing you are worthy of that choice. Growth happens when you stop asking for permission. Healing happens when you stop looking for applause. You don't need an audience to become extraordinary. You just need commitment. You just need clarity. And you need the courage to grow where the world can't see you. That's how real transformation begins. So if you're in that quiet season, if you've gone ghost, if you've pulled back, if you've disappeared to work on you, know this. You are exactly where you need to be. The silence is not your setback, it's your sanctuary. You're not falling behind, you're rising deeper. Don't rush the season, don't explain it, don't dilute it to make others comfortable. Stay there until the work is complete. Stay there until the healing feels like strength. Stay there until the growth becomes undeniable. You're not alone, you're aligned, you're not hiding. You're honoring the divine process of your becoming. And when the world finally sees you again, they won't recognize the version of you that emerges, but you will. And that's all that matters. Life will teach you one thing real fast. You don't rise based on who claps the loudest, but on who reflects the truth the clearest. And if you're not careful, you'll build your entire life around masks, people who smile in your face and applaud your wins, but never challenge your weaknesses. People who flatter you, but never sharpen you. People who wear loyalty like a costume and honesty like a threat. And before you know it, you're surrounded by noise, but starving for truth. You feel encouraged, but never accountable. You're comfortable, but you're not growing. You're admired, but you're not becoming. See, masks will always tell you what you want to hear. But mirrors tell you what you need to see. And sometimes what you need to see hurts. Sometimes it shakes you, but it saves you. It wakes you up. It reminds you that love is not just support. It's correction. It's reflection. It's someone holding up a mirror and saying, look, I see more in you. And I won't let you settle for less. Surround yourself with that. Because those are the people who won't let you fall asleep in your potential. The danger with masks is that they're addictive. Once you get used to being praised without being pushed, you start to fear confrontation. You start to avoid accountability. You surround yourself with yes people. Folks who tell you you're right, even when you're reckless. People who let you vent but never challenge your perspective. People who want access to your light but don't care if you stay in the dark. And the worst part? You start mistaking comfort for love. You start thinking silence is support. But let me tell you something. Real love doesn't stay quiet when you're slipping. Real friendship doesn't celebrate your destruction just to stay close. You need people who love you enough to call you out, who see your blind spots, who know your potential and refuse to let you sabotage it. That kind of love might not feel good in the moment, but it will carry you further than 1,000 fake compliments ever could. Sometimes the people who challenge you the most are the ones who care the deepest. They're not trying to hurt you, they're trying to save you. But because we live in a world obsessed with image, obsessed with applause, obsessed with validation, we push those people away. We confuse honesty for hate. We label accountability as negativity. But growth doesn't live in comfort. It lives in tension. It lives in those hard conversations. It lives in the mirror moments when someone looks you dead in the eye and tells you this isn't who you are. You're better than this. That kind of moment, it's rare, it's raw, and if you're wise, you'll thank God for it. Because the mirror doesn't lie. The mirror doesn't flatter. The mirror doesn't care about your ego. It cares about your elevation. If you're the smartest, strongest, most driven person in your circle, you're not in a circle. You're in a cage. You're in a prison of pride, surrounded by masks that reflect back only what you want to see. But mirrors, real ones, show you what you need to change. They remind you that you still have work to do, and not to tear you down, but to lift you higher. That's why the right people are so important. Not just folks who like you, not just people who hang around, but people who are mirrors, who call you up when you fall short, who remind you of your standards, who sharpen your mind and feed your soul. You don't need more fans, you need more mirrors. People who love the version of you that's growing, not just the one that's glowing. You ever notice how easy it is to lose yourself around masks? You start adjusting who you are just to keep the peace. You shrink your voice, you edit your truth, you start performing instead of living. That's because masks demand a version of you that isn't real. And if you stay around that long enough, you'll forget who you were before you started pretending. But mirrors will bring you back to yourself. They'll remind you of your values, your goals, your power. They'll check you when you drift. They'll hold you accountable when your actions don't align with your purpose. That's love. That's loyalty. That's what real connection looks like. Not comfort that lets you decay, but clarity that pushes you forward. If you want to evolve, stop looking for people who make you feel good. Look for people who make you better. Masks will let you self-destruct in peace. They'll watch you sink just so they can say, I was there. But mirrors, they'll disrupt the spiral. They'll intervene.